In this video, I'll show you how to calculate the instantaneous gradient of a curve using a tangent. So here we have a curve, and I'm going to try to calculate the gradient of the curve, or the slope of this curve, at the point where x equals minus 2. Now this is the point where x equals minus 2, so where x is minus 2 on the curve, is around about here, and it's actually at that point there where these two lines cross. I'm going to try to calculate the gradient of the curve at this point. So the first thing we need to do is to actually draw a tangent that touches the curve at just the point of x equals minus 2, as this one does here. It does take a lot of practice, but here we have a pretty good looking tangent, and so now we need to find some points. So I'm going to need to pick 2 points, and the first point I'm going to pick is around about here, and this is the point x is minus 1 and y is about 1.1. If you saw, it went over, it crossed the line at around about that point there, which is about 1.1. And the second point I'm going to pick is right here, and this is the point x is minus 2.5 and y is the point 5.5. So now that I have my 2 points, I can work out my rise over the run, and therefore my gradient. So for gradient, I can either use rise over the run, or I can use the formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now let's call this the point 2, so this will be x2, y2, and let's call this the point 1, so this will be x1, y1. And so putting that into my equation, I get y2, which is 1.1, minus y1, which is 5.5, over x2, which is minus 1, and then minus x1, which is minus 2.5. And so this will give me the value minus 4.5 over the value plus 1.5, which just happens to work out perfectly to minus 3. Now, I didn't plan that beforehand. You probably don't believe me, but I didn't plan that beforehand. It just so happens that at this point in time, I'm going to get the gradient of minus 3. But it could have quite easily been minus 2.95 or minus 3.1 or something like that. It just so happens to be minus 3. So what does this number mean? It means that the gradient of this curve, this is a cubic curve, the gradient of this curve at the point x equals minus 2, as we've seen before, is the gradient of the tangent at x equals minus 2, which we've worked out to be minus 3.